All right, here we are. We're going to learn about positioning. A few of you have started to ask, well, how do I move things around other than floats? And we've learned about floats. Floats are where we tell things to align to the left or the right, and it moves things around in the normal flow. So let's review normal flow. Right now we have a div named wrapper wrapping around 4 divs. Each of these divs has its own ID, so 1, 2, 3, 4. And as you recall, divs are block level items. They each live on their own line. Let's look at the style sheet for this. Each div is going to have a border so we can see it. So it's going to have a red border around it. And the wrapper has been given a width, some padding so we can see some space between it and the other divs. And it's also been centered. Margin left auto, margin right auto. The result is this. So you can see, here's the outermost div, the wrapper, and here's the first, second, third, and fourth divs. So this is all well and good. This is the normal flow, one thing stacking on top of the other. Now you can see the text inside of each div, the text is inline, it flows. But the divs themselves are block level items, so they're stacking like boxes in a warehouse. That is the normal flow. Now we're going to start using what's called position. Let's just look at the HTML very quickly. I'm going to take div 2 and I'm going to position it. I'm going to give it, let's see, I'm going to say #2 because it's an ID selector. And the first type of positioning is called static. And if I add static positioning, nothing changes because that is the default. So you don't need to indicate static positioning. You know, I've never used it. I'm sure there are reasons to use it. I have never found one. So you don't need to indicate any positioning at all if you just want it to flow normally, if you want it to have static positioning. So that style doesn't do anything for us. Let's go ahead and move to relative positioning. Now, if we just say position relative and leave it at that, once again, nothing happens. Does that mean relative positioning is useless to us? Not entirely. What we can do is we can go and add some coordinates. I'm going to say top, and you can add coordinates for the top, left, right, and bottom. So I'm going to say top 20 pixels and left 300 pixels. So now this is telling it to have relative positioning, and it'll be 20 pixels from the top of its place in line and 300 pixels to the left of its place in line. And there it goes. So you can see it's moved out of its place in line, but its place has been held. This is what relative positioning does. It lets you offset the element while still maintaining its place in line. So everything still acts as if it's there. This is not terribly useful. So at least once again, I've not used this very much except in one case. And I will show you that case in just a little bit. So that's relative positioning. It's the element is repositioned, but its space is still maintained by the other elements. Its place in line in the normal flow is left open. Once again, not terribly useful to us. Now, if we try absolute positioning, we'll see quite a bit of difference. Absolute positioning does this. You can see now, it is now 20 pixels from the top of the browser window and 300 pixels to the left of the browser window, into the browser window. So it now is paying attention only to the browser window. Everything else it acts as if it's not there at all. So absolute positioning takes the element completely out of normal flow and puts it in a particular place. Now, right now, it's paying attention to the browser window. So if I move the browser window around, it only pays attention to it. Now, we want it to pay attention to the wrapper div. In order for that to happen, I need to give the wrapper div a position attribute. I need to give it positioning because the wrapper is the parent element to the div called to. So I'm going to say position relative, but I'm not going to give it any coordinates. I'm just going to give it relative positioning and see what happens. And now the absolutely positioned element only pays attention to the wrapper, and thereby you have successfully moved things around in your composition, and it no longer displaces when you resize the browser window. It only moves with the wrapper div. So let's go ahead and let's try fixed positioning. Fixed positioning is a little bit different from absolute positioning. I'm going to say bottom 20 pixels and right 300 pixels. So I'm going to fix it to the bottom and right. Now, fixed positioning only pays attention to the browser window. This is really great if you have a logo that you want to put down in the corners or something like that. If you want to have an element that you always want in the same position in reference to the browser window. Fixed positioning does not pay attention to anything else but the browser window. It behaves, it pinpoints the coordinates like the absolute positioning, but once again, it only pays attention to the browser window.